Hello everybody. Today inshallah we're going to cover the second part of the SCOR model. As you recall, the SCOR model is divided into two major parts. The first part is concerned about the steps of doing the supply chain activities. So in the first part we defined processes like plan, make, deliver, return. In this part, we'll be trying to evaluate the performance of a company. And before we start, I need to ask you a question. If we have a company that is gaining 200%, so the profit rate is 200%, is it a good company or not? The answer, it is not necessary that this is a good company. We don't evaluate based on just the profit. We evaluate on our performance. So in order for a company to be able to continue in the business, it needs to aim at a strategic objective. So let's say the objective of a company is to be to deliver the product very fast or to have a very low price. So we want to evaluate the price or the speed beside the evaluation of the profit. So the evaluation of the profit here doesn't mean that you're doing well. You need to evaluate also what was your aim. Was your aim to be fast? Then we need to evaluate the speed of the delivery of the product. If your aim was to provide the product at the lowest possible price, then we need to evaluate the price. And that's what we're going to do in this presentation. So in this presentation, we will learn how to evaluate the performance of a supply chain in terms of the metrics, in terms of evaluating the current practices, not the processes itself. It's the result. We want to measure our performance. Unlike the first part, the focus of the first part is to evaluate whether we're doing everything in a correct way or not. The focus of this second part of the SCOR model is to measure our performance. And if we measure a performance and we find that our value or our performance is 80%, we need to know whether 80% is good or bad. And that's what's called benchmarking. So benchmarking means we find a way to measure our performance, 80%, and then we compare this performance to similar companies. Let's say the other companies are doing it at 70%, so it looks like we're better than them. That's the aim of this chapter. So as you recall from the first part of the SCOR was divided in two major parts. One of them was concerned about the processes. And in that processes, it describes the best practices. Okay. And the other part, and that's what we're covering in this lecture, is concerned about the metrics, how to measure the performance. So what we're going to do is I'm going to explain 7 steps in order to do a good benchmarking to your current company. As you recall, the supply chain operation reference, the SCOR, it's a supply chain process reference model. It contains about 200 processes, 550 metrics, and 500 best practices that includes risk and environmental management. And as you recall, for the processes, we divided the processes into plan, source, make, deliver, and then return. And return is divided into return delivered product, this return, or the return sourced product. Also, if you recall the processes part, each process, for example, the manufacturing or the making or the planning, this was called level 1. So each process is first divided into what is the scope of the process. So it's one of the 5 previous processes: process, plan, make, source, deliver, return. So any process can be classified into one of these, and this is called level 1, and it defines the scope of the process. And then within this scope, let's say sourcing, within the sourcing we have different configurations. We have return source stocked items, or source to order items. So we have S1, S2, S3. So this is called configuration. So S1 here, it means source stocked product. And source means the scope of the process is to source. And then this S1 is divided into different processes or tasks. So this is called level 3. So level 3 is the division of the configuration into different activities. For example, one of the activities we do when we do source stock products is to receive the product, and this is called S1.2. So whenever we say S1.2 or any letter P2.1, it means the level here, level 1 defines the scope. So here is the scope is source, the scope here is plan. And then which configuration? This is level 2. Here it's stocked items. Here this is plan source. And then we have several activities. Point 2 here means it's step number 2. Point 1 here, it's activity number 1. And then we further divide this into different tasks and workflow. And this is not standard. We don't standardize this. We leave this up to each company to implement its own system of how to do the process. Now for the level 1 in the metrics. If you recall, level 1 in the processes, it's the scope, okay? It's totally unrelated in the second part, which is the metrics. So in the metrics here, level 1, level 2, level 3 is not related to level 1 or level 2 or level 3 in the processes. They are totally different classifications. They share the same names, they are not related. So if you want to measure the performance of your company, any company can compete on one of 5 possible ways. And we focus here on the supply chain. The supply chain can compete on one of 5 things. The obvious thing is it either competes on the cost or on the speed responsiveness. This is what you learn in the supply chain management course, that the supply chain is either cost efficient or responsive supply chain. However, here we're defining 5 ways or 5 competition edges. The first one or the first 3 are related to the customer. The customer feels them. The second 2 are concerned with the company. The company feels them. So for the customer will feel that you're fast, so this is your speed. So we compete on responsiveness. The supply chain is fast. Or we can compete on reliability. By saying a reliable supply chain, it means if you give me a certain date or a promise, you fulfill that promise. It doesn't have to be fast or slow. So if you tell me that you're going to deliver next week, you're going to deliver next week. If you tell me that you're going to deliver within 1 month, you will deliver within 1 month. So reliability means sticking to your promise. Another advantage is to be agile, which is agility. Agility is another meaning for being flexible. So if I order a small quantity, you can fulfill the small quantity. If I order a large quantity, you can fulfill the large quantity. If I order it to be delivered fast, you can deliver it fast. If I order it to be delivered slow and cheap, you can do it. So you're flexible. Your supply chain is not rigid. It's not designed to fulfill one aspect, to be fast, to be cheap. No, it's adaptive. So whenever you ask for a speed, you will find it. Whenever you ask for a cost, you will find it. So here are the three things that the customer can feel. So either the speed, or sticking to promise, and this is called reliability, or being flexible, and this is called agile. The company can feel one of two things. One thing is to be very cheap, and this is cost, or to utilize your assets in the best possible way. So if you have an inventory, you use all of the warehouse, for example. You don't use half of it. So this is called assets management. So what I want to say from here is, if you have a supply chain within a company, this supply chain can compete on one of five things: either to be fast, reliable, agile, so in other words, fast, sticking to promise, flexible, and this is felt by the customer. Or from inside, you want to save money, so the cost, competing on the cost, or competing on the assets. So this is called level one. So similar to the previous level one in the processes part, it is divided into five things, but it's not P and no, it's not the plan, make, source, deliver. No, now it's reliability, responsiveness, agility, cost, and assets. Then if you open the second part of the SCOR model, and you want to measure the performance of, for example, the responsiveness, you need to measure order fulfillment cycle time. So this is level one here. So if you want to measure the performance of the responsiveness of your company, you need to measure order fulfillment cycle time. How can you get this? You go to the SCOR model, you open the page for responsiveness, it will tell you that you need to measure the order fulfillment cycle time. You open the page for the order fulfillment cycle time, you find the definition of how to measure this order fulfillment cycle time, where you can find it, in which processes, how you evaluate this. So you find every possible information about how to evaluate this one. So this is called level one here. If you want to focus more on responsiveness, you want to be a little bit better than the others, we need to get the details of level one. In other words, if you want to be fast, for example, order fulfillment cycle time, what is the details of this one? This is called level two. If you want to be super at this one, at responsiveness, we need to go further deep into level three. So, as an idea so far, if you want to just to measure the performance and you want to know whether you're okay or not, we measure level one. If you want to be better than the others, you measure level two. If you want to be super, we need to measure level three. We'll get back to this later. But so far, here is the definition of level one. If you want to measure the reliability, you need to measure what's called perfect order fulfillment. If you want to measure the cost, you need to measure supply chain management cost and cost of goods sold. So this is level one. Before we start, we need to define or review what's meant by best practices. By saying a best practice, it means it's a current, up to date, structured, have a way or have some steps to follow, proven, it has been used everywhere else, and it has been proven that this is a good way to use. And repeatable. In other words, if you repeat it in your company, every time you get best results method. So it's a method that is current, up to date, structured, has steps to do. It's successful every way. It has been repeated every way for making a positive impact on desired operational results. So by saying current, we say it's up to date. When we say structured, it means it has procedures to follow. When we say proven, it means other people have used it and it was successful for them. Repeatable, it means if you repeat it in different environments, you get similar or good results. So back to the definition of benchmarking. What's meant by benchmarking? Benchmarking means we need to measure our performance and then we need to compare it to others. That's why we have two types of benchmarking. The obvious one is the quantitative one. Let's measure our performance in the delivery. We measure how long do we take to deliver, let's say 3 days. How long the others take to deliver, they take 5 days, so we are better than them. That's for the metrics, the different metrics. And that's mean we're better than them by 2 days. So we know the gap. We know whether we're better than them or we are worse than them by how much. We have another thing which is called qualitative benchmarking. If we're using one method, let's say we're using method of MRP, and another company is using ERP, and definitely ERP is better than MRP. So that's called qualitative benchmarking. In other words, we're comparing our practices, we're using MRP, to different organizations' practices. They use ERP. So this gives an idea about our maturity. Are you mature enough? Are we mature enough as a company? We're using up-to-date tools or not? And the third way of doing the benchmarking is called competitive benchmarking. In other words, when we open a supply chain, we want to compete on one of the previous 5 things. Let's say on the speed, responsiveness. So we want to know whether we're good at responsiveness when we compare ourselves to others or not. And that's a competitive way. We want our supply chain to be fast. So how fast we are in response to or in comparison to other supply chains. So this is concerned with quantitative benchmarking between companies. We're comparing our company to other companies. Now, in order to do this competitive benchmarking, we need to go into 7 steps. So these are the 7 steps required to do the benchmarking. The first one is to identify how many supply chains do we have in our system. As we will see later, when we have different products, we may need a product to be delivered fast, another product to be delivered cheap. So we have different supply chains. We don't have just one supply chain department. Within that supply chain department, we have different aims for different products. So we have different supply chains. So I will teach you how to identify the supply chains that you have. And then when you have several supply chains, we have priority. Which one is more important than the others? So I will teach you how to find which one is more important. And then for each supply chain, you need to know your strategic objective. So we need to formulate a strategy. What do you want to compete on? Are you going to compete on price, speed, flexibility, reliability? From this one, we need to identify which measurements we need to measure. So what are the matrices required for that case? And when we identify this, we need to collect the data, we need to analyze the data, and then we need to find whether we're good or bad. And that's what we're going to learn today. So the first one is supply chain definition. Once again, in any company, we don't have just one supply chain. We have different supply chains. Why? Because we have different products. For example, if you're selling, for example, Ariel, and if you're selling, the same company is selling, for example, Oxy, detergents. We need this to be delivered as cheap as possible. We want this to be delivered as reliable as possible. We want to be delivered according to orders. But this one needs to be delivered to save money. So we have different supply chains. So what we're going to do is we're going to form a matrix. Matrix is a table like that. In the columns here, we have the output. In the rows, we have the input. Let's have a look here. In the column part, we divide the column part into different groups. For example, we can say customers from Europe and then customers from Asia, like that. And then Europe can be further divided into major accounts and one-time buyers. And then we can further divide them into bulk shipments and same-day delivery. In other words, because we have too many customers, let's say we have 100,000 customers. We don't want to form a table that contains 100,000 columns. So what we're going to do is we want to classify them into different groups. So we divide them, for example, into customers of the north part of Egypt and then customers from the south part of Egypt. And then from here, we form major customers and minor customers, and major customers and minor customers. So instead of having 100,000 customers, we now have 4 categories: north, major, north, minor, south, major, south, minor. So the idea here, we try to group them in order to decrease the size of the columns. Instead of having 100,000 columns, we have just now 4 columns. That's what we're going to do for the column part. For the row parts, once again, we have different products. Let's say we have 10 products. So instead of having 10 rows for different products, we try to group them. So we can group them by business division. For example, commercial and standard. And then product line. If you're producing air conditioning, you can divide them into split and window, for example. You can split the products into large products, small project, frequent product, small products, large parts, small parts. The idea is, instead of having 10 rows, we will have fewer rows. Let's have an example here. We have 100,000 customers. We say we have north and south. And then from the north and south, we can divide them into major, minor customers. And then we have different products. Instead of listing all the products, we can divide them into business product and home, for example, products. And then this can be classified into large product and small product. So instead of having too many rows, we have now business large, business small, home large, home small. Let's have an example like this one. In this company, this is an air conditioning company. It divides the market into retail and commercial. And for the retail, they divide them into big box, internet direct, and stores. For the commercial, they divide them into buildings, major accounts, and distributors. So instead of listing all the possible customers, for example, Internet Direct, we have like 100,000 customers. Instead of listing all the 100,000 customers, we just group them into this is the internet sector. And for the product, it's divided into big air conditions, small air conditions, custom industrial air conditions, and standard industrial. And then from here, we find how do we sell this one? We sell it using internet for building and from distributors. How about the small air condition? We sell it in this way, that way, and that way. How do you sell the custom industrial? We sell it like this and like that. How do you sell the standard industrial? Like this and like that. If you count the X's here, first, if you count the rows and the columns, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 rows. So 6 times 4. So we have a possible of 24 supply chains. And because we're using these X's only, then if we can't count them, it's now 10 supply chains. So we have now 10 supply chains. And we want them to be fewer, smaller. So what we do is we're going to combine the similar products. And because we want to form them into similar products, we're going to look at the build strategies. Any products that are sold in like make to stock and others that are sold by buying, we can group them. Any product that is built to order can be grouped into one group, or the products that are built to stock can be formed into one group, or the products that are engineered to order can be in one group, or according to the life cycle. Any product that is just new introduced to the supply chain or the market can be grouped together, or if they are midlife, or they are commodity, or they are into life, or if the products can be divided into different regions, north and south, can be grouped together. So what we want to do is we have already 10 supply chains from the previous table. We want to examine these supply chains, and if there are similarity, we can group them. For example, if we find the first two similar, we group them into one supply chain. So instead of having 10, we will have now 9 or 8. Back to this one. Have a look at the standardized or standard industrial. Have a group at the big air conditions here. We find that the big air conditions are built to stock, and the standard industrial are also built to stock. And we find also that we ship large quantities. So what we're going to do here is we're going to combine this one and this one and this one and this one into one supply chain. Why? Because they are very similar. They are built to stock, and we ship large quantities. In other words, instead of having 10 X's here, what we're going to do is this has no similar products, so this is the first supply chain, and this one has no similar supply chain, so this is the second supply chain. These two are similar, so we will combine them. This is the third. These four are similar, this one and that one and that one and that one, so we will consider this as another supply chain. And then the blue ones here is another supply chain. So as you can see here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 supply chains. So instead of having 10 supply chains, we just have now 5 supply chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 supply chains. So we group together the products that have similar characteristics in order to form fewer supply chains in order to be able to analyze them. If you didn't do that, the result is that you need to analyze 10 supply chains. And as we will see later, this is a huge effort. Now, in order to give priority, we need to give or to find what is important for our company. We may find that the size of the product is important, the revenue, the volume, the margin, the complexity, the number of SKUs, strategic importance, cash consumption, risk, volume. So list whatever important for you. And this is something qualitative. We don't want actual values. Just qualitative. Is the size important to you? Yes or no? Is the revenue important to you? Yes or no? And then put the different supply chains we got from the different step. From the different step we had 5 supply chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 supply chains. And then for each of the important aspects that you determined, for example, for this company, revenue, margin, number of SKUs, unit volume, strategic value, these are the important aspects to this company. And then give a score for each item, or give a rank for each item. For example, the revenue. What is the lowest revenue? This is the lowest revenue. Then what's next? This is next. What's best? This is the best one. And then for the next one here, what's the lowest gross margin? This one. What's next? This one. What's next? This one. What's the number of SKU? What is the worst one? This one. What's intermediate? This one. What's the best? This one. And so on. So you give different scores for different aspects. And then you add all these values. So 2, 2, 2, 2 plus 3. Then the total is 8 plus 3. So this is 11. This is 10. This is 9. In other words, this is the most important supply chain for us. This is number 2, this is number 3, and if we have others, we order them. So the result of this step is you know now what is important for you and what is less important. In other words, we need to focus first on improving this one. When we finish, we can shift to this one. When we finish, we can shift to this one. Because we cannot do everything at one time. We need to do it step by step or one by one. The third step is we need to specify a strategy. We can't compete on everything. That's the key point. So what we want to do is when we have a supply chain, we selected now a supply chain. And by a supply chain, we don't mean all the company. We mean that within the company, we have different products and we want a product to be fast and we want another product to be cheap. So we classified the different supply chains from step number 1. And then we gave a priority. So we now know what is important. What is the most important supply chain for us so far? And then we need to give priority. Which one of these is the main objective of the current supply chain? We need to specify one of them. And one of them we need to be better than any other company. So this is called the strategic objective. And we call it here to be superior. We want to be super or superior or better than the others in which one of these? And then you can choose another one in which you want to be better than the others but not the best. So this is called advantage. And then how about the remaining 5? You just be normal. And this is we call at par. So we have 3 levels here. We want to choose one of them to be our main strategic objective. So we want to be superior. Superior means you are better than any other company that is doing the same business. So for example, we want to be cheaper than anyone else. So we call this S. We want to be superior in this. At the same time, you can choose from the remaining 4. You can choose 1 or 2 in which you want to be good. This is called advantage. By saying advantage here, it means you're better than the others, but you're not the best. You're among the best, but you're not the best one. You're just good or very good. So for example here, I want to be a little bit fast. So here's advantage. Because what you know from other courses, you cannot be super at the cost and super at the responsiveness. You cannot deliver it very fast, at the same time very cheap. So for this company, they want the cost to be number one. They want to be very, very cheap. At the same time, they want to be a little bit fast. They can't be the fastest. That's why it's A. How about the remaining five, the remaining three among the five? We can't be any good in them. So what we're going to do is we're going to be okay. We called okay to be at par. P. We want to be just fine. So this is P, P, P. So once again, the definition of being superior, it means you're a top performer. You're excellent. Advantage means you're in the top 70% or top half. So you're very good. Parity means you're average. Half better, half worse. Now here is some indication which priority or which strategy is good for each type of product. So let's start by when you manufacture anything, you either do the total manufacturing or you just buy it from somewhere else. If you buy the product, then we recommend that you focus on your assets, then your cost. So this is the most recommended priority or strategy, because your supply chain needs to save the money, and your supply chain needs to use the assets that they have, the warehouse that they have. They need to use it very well. If you're doing making, we have three types of making. You either do engineer to order, build to order, or build to stock. If you do engineer to order, if you build by engineering to order, or you make by engineering to order, in other words, the customer places an order and then you take a long time to build the product, and then you deliver the product. So you want to keep your promise. So number one here, number one recommended is to be reliable, to focus on reliability. So if I give you an estimation of the lead time to be 3 months, you need to deliver within the 3 months in order to be reliable. And this is the most recommended strategy for the supply chain within the engineering to order. Following to this one, we need to respond as fast as possible within this period, because you already have a large lead time, so we don't want to be late. So we need to respond quickly. If you build to order, because if you build to order, sometimes you have orders to produce and sometimes you don't have orders to produce. So sometimes you're busy, sometimes you're not busy. So we want to focus on utilization of our units. We don't want to sometimes to be empty and sometimes to be very busy. No, we want to use the assets as effective as possible. And because we have so much time to produce, we have a lead time. When you order, I need time to produce the order. So I need, once again, to be reliable. So number one, to focus on assets and then on reliability. If you build to stock, you're saving the product. We have 3 ways or 3 phases on the life cycle. 4 phases on the life cycle. Introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. So if you are in this one here, you don't know the actual demand. You need to respond quickly. You need to be adaptable. If the orders increases, then production increases. If the order decreases, then the response or the number of producers should be decreased. So you need to be flexible. So number one here, the most recommended strategy when you in a starting in a new build to stock product, you need to be flexible because you don't know so far what is the actual demand. At the same time, the next one or the next strategy, or what we call P, this is number one should be S, number two should be A. You should be super in number one, and you should be very good in number two. You need to respond quickly because we don't know the demand so far. So whenever we have a demand, we need to respond to that demand. So you need to be flexible and we need to be fast. If it is in the growth phase, this phase, we have a rapid increase in the production. We want to save our money now. So in this one, we need to focus on cost. And because we have an increasing demand, we may be late. So the next step is to focus on the time of delivery. When you say next month, it's next month. I need to trust your word. Then when it's mature, the demand is known, at that stage, we need to decrease our cost and increase the use of assets. When we're in the end of life, now we need to use our machines in a good way. So we need to focus on the assets. And then on the cost. These are the most recommended strategies for different products, if it is buy to order or make to order, and within the make to order, whether it's build to stock, build to order, or engineer to order. So let's take an example. What do you understand from this strategy? If you want to analyze this strategy, this supply chain needs to be excellent at reliability and needs to be very good in responsiveness and flexibility, and needs to be okay or at par for the cost and the assets. So for this company or for this product, they want to be reliable. If I give you an estimated date, I need to deliver by that estimated date. And then if it's ready to be shipped, it needs to be shipped fast, this one. And if there is a change in the quantity or the timing, I need to do it fast. And I don't pay much attention to the cost or the assets. That's a choice of your supply chain. That's a choice of your company. For this specific group, that's commercial. So they order different products and they are very expensive. So I'm not saving cost. I'm not saving assets. The main target here is to deliver at the required time. And then if it is a little bit late, I need to deliver it fast. If there is a change in the order, I need to adapt to that order. That's why they choose this one, or they chose this one for this strategy for this company. Have a look at the next one here. For the small air conditions, this one, for the group of this one, the main focus of this supply chain is to compete on assets. They need to use the asset as effective as possible. And then they need to be flexible and save cost. And they don't have to be reliable or responsiveness. That's the lowest ranked things for them. Now, if you open the page for perfect order fulfillment for the reliability, as you can see here, they tell you if you want to measure the reliability, you need to measure perfect order fulfillment. So level 1, perfect order fulfillment. Now, if you open the page for perfect order fulfillment, it's divided into 4 different things. One of them is called documentation accuracy. Perfect order fulfillment, it means you delivered the order in perfect states. Perfect means it arrives on time, complete, with all the documentation, and in good conditions. I don't need to memorize all of this. When you open the page for the perfect order fulfillment, you'll find that it's divided into 4 measurements here. You don't have to think about them. This is called level 1, this is called level 2. And then this level 2 here, document accuracy, is divided into these 4 measurements. So this one is divided into 4 other measurements. This is called level 3. And if you open the page for this one, you may find other level 3. And if you open this one, you'll find level 3. In other words, there is a hierarchy. Perfect order fulfillment, this is level 1, is divided into several level 2 measurements, and then each of these level 2 measurements is divided into different level 3 measurements. So what can we do, or how can we use this one? The idea is, if you want to be at par from the previous slide, you want to be just okay, you need to measure just level 1 and make sure that level 1 is okay. If you want to be better, advantage, then you need to measure level 1 and level 2. If you want to be superior, you need to measure level 1, 2, and 3. You need to measure all the details. You need to make sure that every possible step within your supply chain is good. So once again, it all depends on your choice of the supply chain. What do you want from your supply chain? We have 5 different measures. One of them should be superior, 1 or 2 should be A, advantage, and the remaining should be P. For anything that you select to be P, then you just measure level 1. For the things that you selected to be A, then you need to measure level 1 and level 2. For the things that you selected to be superior, you need to measure level 1, 2, and 3. So back again, here are the level 1. So for example, if you say I want to be superior here, advantage here, at par here, at par here, at par here. So for this one, you need to measure for this A level 1 and 2. For this one, you need to measure 1, 2, and 3. Level 1, 2, and 3. For this one, we need to measure level 1 with this level 1 and this level 1. What's level 1 for each of this one? This is level 1. So for reliability, you need to measure perfect order fulfillment. For the responsiveness, you need to measure order fulfillment cycle time. For the agility, you need to measure level 1. In that case, they have 2 measures for level 1. You need to measure supply chain flexibility, supply chain adaptability. For the cost, you need to measure this one, and you go to the page of this one and find what are the type 2 or level 2 for them. And then for each of these, it's divided into level 3. You need to measure level 3 as well. And this one is divided into level 3. You need to measure this one. So we measure this one, and this one, and this one. We measure level 1, 2, and 3. For the assets, you need to measure this as level 1. And because this is advantage, you need to go for that page and find what is level 2 for each of them. What's level 2? You measure level 2 as well. What's level 2 here? It could be 1 measure, 2 measures, 3 measures. So once again here, what it says so far, if I want to be superior in any aspect, I need to measure the performance of level 1, 2, and 3. If you want to be just advantage, we measure level 1 and 2. If you just want to be okay, we just measure level 1. So back to the example that I gave you before. I told you before when we formed the strategy that there is a company that needs to be superior in the reliability. What we need to go is, first we need to go into the first part of the metrics. In the first part of the metrics, it will give you a table, and that table it says if you want to measure reliability, you measure perfect order fulfillment. That's level 1. If you want to measure responsiveness, it gives you what to measure. If you want to measure, this is the table you find in the previous slide. So now I know for the reliability, level 1 measurement or metrics is perfect order fulfillment. But I don't understand what is perfect order fulfillment. Similar to the SCOR model, there is a page that's called perfect order fulfillment. Perfect order fulfillment. You open this page, you will find the description how to measure the perfect order fulfillment. It also gives you an information where to find the different measurements, the data. If I want to collect the data, it will tell you in order to find the data for the perfect order fulfillment, you need to find S1.2, S2.2. It gives you where to find the needed data. So perfect order fulfillment, it means here how many orders arrived in good conditions at the promised date. So it will tell you where to find this data in your system. And then the last part of the page, it tells you perfect order fulfillment is divided into what's level 2. You'll find that it's divided into 4 things. Perfect conditions, accurate documentation, delivery performance to commit date, number of orders delivered in full. Now, let's recall what I said so far. What I said so far is we have a page for perfect order fulfillment. We go to that page to find what's perfect order fulfillment. I don't know what's perfect order fulfillment. How to measure the perfect order fulfillment. What data is required to measure the perfect order fulfillment. And then what is the level 2 of perfect order fulfillment? You will find that they give you 4 things. Copy these 4 things here. So you'll find that there is something called percent of order delivered in full, how many orders delivered complete, and then how many orders delivered in the committed date, in the required date, and then how many orders arrived with accurate documentation, and how many orders arrived in perfect conditions. So once again, I don't remember this, I don't recall this, I don't memorize this. I bring this information from the SCOR model. When I open the page for perfect order fulfillment, I'll show you an example soon. Because I want to be superior, I need to cover level 1, 2, and 3. So we go to the page of perfect order fulfillment. That's level 1. It will tell you that level 1 is divided into 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have another page for each of them. So there is a page for percent of order delivered in full. If you open the page for this one, once again, you'll find how to measure it, which process you need to track it, where to find the data required. And then in that page, you'll find that it's divided into 2 measurements as level 3. Delivery item accuracy, delivery quantity accuracy. So it makes sense now that in order to receive a product in perfect order fulfillment, it needs to be arrived in full, it needs to be arrived in time, it needs to have accurate documentation, and it needs to be in good conditions or perfect conditions. Now, to be delivered in full, it means that the item itself is accurate, that's the required item, and the quantity is accurate. This is the component of this one. So you don't have to think what is the component of each of them. Already SCOR can give you the component. So if you want the perfect order fulfillment, open the page for perfect order fulfillment. Here is the component of perfect order fulfillment. Now, if you want to focus more on this one, open the page of this one. It gives you what is the level 3 for this one. Now write in the table all the items that you need to analyze. So this one is needed to be measured, this one needed to be measured, this one needs to be measured, this one needs to be measured. So you have a table of what matrices or metrics you need to measure. Let's complete this one. For the responsiveness, this company needs to be A, advantage. So they open the first level. In order to be responsive, the level 1 here is to measure order fulfillment cycle time. And because I need to be advantage, I need to go further, level 2. So we open the page for this one and find out what is the component of level 2 here. You find that we have 3 measures here. We need to measure these 3 measures. For this one, flexibility. This company needs, or this supply chain needs to be parity, at par. It means it's enough to measure performance level 1. So here is performance level 1. For the cost, they just want to be P, so they measure this one only. That's it. For the assets, they need to be advantage. Because they want to be advantage, they need to measure level 1 and go to the details of level 1 and find what is level 2 for this one. So the result of this one is we have a table now of what needs to be measured. Here are the things that needs to be measured. If you didn't understand what I said, pay attention from here. We have different products within the company. We need to form similar products into groups of supply chain. So let's say we have here, we're delivering bread. So here we just deliver bread. We have a supply chain for bread. So the supply chain of bread needs to focus on cost. So we will say we need to minimize the cost. So we need to be superior at the cost. And then we need to be advantage on using our assets. And then we need to be just fine in the remaining parts. Okay, if I am I'm delivering also cakes. So for the cakes now, we have different supply chain. It's different from the bread. So for the case of the cakes, we need to be reliable. If I give you a date, I need to deliver this cake in that specific date. And then I need to be responsive and agile a little bit. So advantage, not superior. I can't be superior in many things. Superior just in one of them. And then for the cost and assets, you need to be at bar. Okay? Now, what I want to do is anything that has S, we need to find level 1, 2, 3. All the metrics in level 1, 2, 3 needs to be measured. For the A's, we need to measure level 1 and 2. For the P's, we need to measure just level 1. Where can I get level 1? Here is level 1. So for example here, for reliability, I need to measure perfect order fulfillment. For the responsive, because all of them need level 1 here, so we need to measure all of this. So we need to measure perfect order fulfillment for reliability. We need to measure order fulfillment cycle time for responsiveness. We need to measure the flexibility and adaptability for the agility, and so on. Okay? The next question is how to find or how to measure each of this. What is the meaning of each of this? I will take this as an example. Okay? What is perfect order fulfillment? You will find a page in the SCOR model. It's called perfect order fulfillment. Here is perfect order fulfillment. What is the meaning of perfect order fulfillment? Here is the meaning of perfect order fulfillment. How can I measure it? Here is how can I measure it. Where can I find it? It will give you where can you find it, in which processes. And then what is the component of level 2? This one here is divided into 4 measurements here. So if you are interested in level 2, you need also to measure this one. If it's S or A, we need also to measure this one. But I don't know what is the meaning of this one. So we have a page for each of them. So we have a page for this one here. Here is the page for this one. Percent of order delivered in full. What is the meaning of this one? Here is the meaning of this one. Here is the meaning of this one. How can you calculate it? Here is the calculation. How can you collect the data? Here is how you collect the data. So this is level 2, as you remember from the previous step. This is level 2. Then if you are interested in level 3, this one here, this is level 1. It's divided into several level 2. We're focusing on this one now. This one is divided now into these two. These two are called level 3. Likewise, there is a page for this one and there is a page for this one that describes how to measure this one and where can you get the data for these two. Okay? So the next step is we need to collect the data. SCOR gives you where to collect the data, but also we need to collect the data from the financial department. We can get it from the customers, we can get it from the IT, we can get it from the suppliers, we can get it from the 3PL providers. So after we do this, we have a table from the previous one in order we have in which we have all the metrics that we need to measure. And who's the owner of each of them? Where can you get the data from? And then you specify whether it's finished, in process, not started, due date. You give information. So this is now the current plan. For each metrics, there is an owner who will measure the performance. Where can he get the data from? What is the due date of the process? Is it completed or not completed? After we finish, we have a value for each of these one. We don't have for level 1 best, just for level 1 as we see, as I show here, but we have for anything that's S, we have for level 1, 2, and 3. For A, we have level 1 and 2. For P, we have just level 1. I'm just showing this portion to explain it, but it's a large table, okay? And this is your evaluation, your value, 97%. Is it good or bad? We don't know. So we need an extra step. The extra step is we need to go to the Apex, the owner of the SCOR, and we want to buy this data. If I am doing a certain business in a certain sector, what is the performance of similar companies? If I'm making bread, what is the performance of companies that are making bread in Egypt? It will give you 3 values. It will give you three values. Here are the three values. One of them is the value for the superior companies, one of them is the value for the advantage companies, and one of them is the value for the regular companies. And this is your value, 97%. I need to evaluate 97%. The first thing to evaluate is to look at your objective. Here is S. So I need to compare it to that S. That's the first thing. The other thing, you need to know whether the value, this value, when you increase it, is it something good, or when you decrease it, is it something good? So if you look here, 92%, 95, 98, it means the more the better. So 97% in comparison to 98%, it's worse, it's not good. So we have a gap by 1%. For the second one, we have 14 days. We need to compare it to A. A here is the advantage, so we need to compare it to 6 days. And then, is it better to be more or less than 6 days? We look at this value here. It decreases, so the less the better. So 14 days, it's not less than 6 days, so it's bad, so it's worse. So we need to decrease this value to be 6 instead of 14, so we need to decrease it by 8 days. For the flexibility here, we need to be at par, so we compare it to 80 days. And our value is 62 days. And if we have a look here, the less the better. So it means here we are good. We're not actually good, we're super. We're reaching here the advantage. However, this is not important to the company. This is P, so this is not very important. In other words, you're spending your time or wasting your effort on something that's not important for the customer. Flexibility is not important because it's P. You're doing very well in flexibility, even though it's not required by the customer. It's not the objective of the supply chain. So you're spending your time and your effort on something that's useless for the customer. For the cost, P, so this value needs to be compared to this one. Should it be larger or smaller? We have a look here. It needs to be smaller. It needs to be decreased. So 12.2, it's not better than 10.8. So we need to decrease this one to be 10.8. So we need to decrease by 1.4%. For the assets, here we need to be advantage. So we need to compare by this to this one. And the less is better. 45, 33, 20, so we need to decrease. So 35 is not less than 33. So it's not good. So we need to decrease it by 2 days. And by importance, we need to focus on this first, and then on this one and that one, the A's, and then on this one. And because we're very, very, very good in this one, we need it to be 80 days, but we're doing it in 62 days. That's much better. We're wasting our effort on something that's not valuable to the customer. That's not what the customer wants. Finally, to give you an estimation of how long does that project take. If you have a look at the case of definition of the supply chain, it takes 1 to 2 days. If you recall, we have 7 steps. The first step is to have a definition of what are the different supply chains that we have. The second step is to give a priority for each of them. It takes also 1 day. And then what is the strategy for each of them? It takes also 1 day. And then what is needed to be measured, the performance metrics, it takes also 1 day. So all of this takes so far 4 to 5 days, working days, 1 week. And then to get the actual data and do the actual analysis and find the actual measurements and compare your measurement to the standard that you can get from SCOR, it ranges from 3 to 12 months for each supply chain from what you defined here. So this is not something trivial. You can apply it anywhere. If you work at any company, you don't go and tell them, I'm very good at performance analysis, let's do it. You need to know that this is an extensive effort. You need to know that this should be appreciated by your company. You need to know that this is supported by the upper management. You want to make sure that the company encourages you to do that before you just start to do this effort. So this is not something you need to apply everywhere. Unlike the process part or unlike the lean part, you can do this everywhere. But for the SCOR benchmarking here, you need to apply it when you work as intermediate or upper manager, not as a starting engineer or a fresh graduate. Okay. Thank you so much.